All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast, episode 57, the number one podcast in the world for growing your insurance business. I'm your host, Christian Brindle. I'm joined with my co-host, as always, Glen Shelton.
Hello.
And we got a doozy of a show for you guys today. We're going to be talking about times that we went bust. We're going to get a little personal with y'all today.
Did you see the comment from Steve on the post? He's like, I thought you guys were perfect. Well, we are, Steve. We are.
The show is over. There was never a time. So see you guys tomorrow.
We batted 1,000 our whole careers. It's pretty wild, but we wanted to tell everyone together.
We wanted to have a 5-minute show because the day just works a lot easier when we do it that way.
That's it, you guys. NC.
I wanted to start off with this, with a parable of sorts to start the show. Ooh. Something that kind of was on my mind this morning. I thought it would be an interesting topic of conversation to kind of pre-launch the show this morning. So I have to start this off by telling a quick story. So, and I was interested kind of in your perspective in this as well. Just kind of, just hearing if you kind of share my view on this and my thoughts. But so many of you probably know, but maybe you don't. I typically have a routine where I will go to the gym in the morning. And this is something that I've started probably for the last 3 months or so. And
where is this going? Guys, the roller coaster ride of co-hosting this show.
So the schedule works something like this. I will go into the gym. I'll get up in the morning. I will go into the gym.
What time are you waking up? Back up. Hang on a second. What time are you going to sleep? Let's go back even further. What time do you typically go to sleep now that you wake up there?
10:30 is usually around the time that I will go to bed. So then I'll get up at 6. It gives me roughly 7.5 hours if I fall right asleep.
That's a good number. I like that.
And so
number.
I'll get up at 6. I will grab a quick breakfast. I will.
What do you eat? Well, we're gonna go through this. We're gonna go through this piece. What do you typically get in the morning?
It'll either be cereal or a breakfast shake, one of the two, depending
Fruit
on
Loops.
No. Life cereal, regular Life, not cinnamon.
Hey, Mikey, he likes it. Hey, Mikey.
So anyway, I go to the gym. I'll try to get a workout in to kind of start my day. On a slower week, I'm probably getting 3 workouts in a week, but on a good week, I'm getting probably 5, right? So it's no less than 3. And I have this split schedule now because people always ask me, why don't you use your home gym? People have seen that I put a home gym into my house. It costs several thousands of dollars. So why don't you use a home gym? Well, I do use the home gym on the days that I work from home. So typically half the week I'll come into the office, be here in person, work with the team. And those are the days I'll go to the health club, the gym. And then on the days I work from home, I'll use the home gym, right? So split schedule a little bit, keeps things fresh for me. Right. And when I'm finishing my workout, I've kind of gotten into the routine when I go into the gym that I will stop at this health smoothie place that rents space in the gym. It's a totally separate business, but they're like a organic health location.
What are we getting at the smoothie bar? Tell me, what are we getting?
So I almost always get a smoothie.
Is that what you had yesterday, by the way? Was that from the place?
Pretty much every day. If you see me have something in my hand, it's the same thing every day. And these drinks are not cheap. I will start off by saying that. They're probably about $10 a whack. And I will typically get something that is made up of some protein, some 0-calorie almond milk, some seeds, if you will, some bananas, maybe some peanut butter. Yeah, typically chia seeds.
Chia seeds. Yeah.
So for me, For me, it's a healthy alternative to getting the sugar-induced coffees that I historically was getting in the past to start my morning.
Right.
Give me just something else. People always ask, why don't you just get a black coffee? I hate black coffee. I just don't want it. This is an easier alternative for me. So I this morning I go to, the drink place that's in the gym on my way out, and I notice they're not open. And typically their hours are, they open 7:30. That's their regular business hours.
Okay.
And I'm like, interesting. So I sit around waiting to see if someone will show up to open the doors. No one does. Gets to about 8:00. I'm like, I gotta go. So I leave. Now, walking out to the car, I'm thinking about this and I'm like, this isn't the first time this has happened. Think about it a little deeper. Probably about 30% of the days that I'm at the gym, this happens. No one shows up. No one opens the doors during their regular business hours. What happens as a result of that, the domino effect, is I end up going to some other place to get a smoothie, some bigger chain, something like that. And so I will essentially take my business elsewhere. They lose my $10 for the day. Now, if I'm experiencing this 30% of the time that I wish to do business with this location, I wish to get my drink during regular business hours, I can only imagine that other people are experiencing the same thing. It's not just a me thing. There's probably other regular customers that don't have time to wait around. I'm sure they open eventually, right? Maybe 10, 11, 12, whatever the case might be.
Right.
But it's inconsistent with their regular business hours. You might think, oh, holiday, right? Yesterday, President's Day, they're open on time. Today, following a holiday, not, right? And I think it has a lot to do with,
You're just so bothered
No.
internally.
I'm going somewhere.
No.
I promise.
I know. I think I know where you're going now, and I feel good about this story.
So
I thought this was gonna end with you just being like, and my morning's ruined. Get my food. I'm like, how old are you? Like,
so
old man Christian.
In this situation, my business on that 30% of the time that I'm seeking to do business with them, right, gets sucked in by another business.
Yeah.
Typically a larger chain, right? Somebody that's, more of a franchise, lots of locations, things like that. And
a Jamba Juice, if you will.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
And I say that to say, it made me think, I've seen a lot of businesses in my day, and I'm sure you have as well.
Absolutely.
That have suffered from this same challenge of availability.
Yes.
Right? And it's understandable, right? If you're not available all hours of the day, right? If it's like past your business hours, right? Or I'm camped outside of your location at 6:30, you don't open until 7:30, understandable. But if it's a routine thing, if a third of the time I can't get in during your regular business hours to give you my business, typically businesses like that don't last very long. That's usually the trend, right? Because if it happens to me a third of the time, it's happening to probably everyone a third of the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so it got me thinking about availability and how important it is to making yourself available at the proper times to your clients and to your customers. I think that one of the biggest death blows that a small business can face is not being available when they're supposed to be to their customers. And I see that challenge a lot with agents as well, right? I would be fascinated if we did a game one of these days where we looked up agents in random cities, tried to call them and see how easily we could get someone on the phone.
That would be hilarious. No one would answer their phone.
Yeah. No way. And it's such an interesting phenomenon, right? Like, and it speaks to why these bigger businesses end up becoming so successful, because how easily is it for me when I can't get my drink to go there and they swallow up my business. I've never had that situation where I can't get my drink.
No pun intended, but there was a nice little pun there.
Yes,
to seal it up. I think it's a super valid story, super valid argument. And to circle back to our space with this analogy, this is why these giant call centers keep winning, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee it. And we should absolutely do it. Maybe we do an episode one day where we just start dialing agents. The whole show is just calling agents. We'll pull up one of these directories. We'll pull up one of these directories and we'll see how many agents. I'll never forget another example of this. I'll never forget. When I bought this house that I'm in now, I needed to get a home insurance policy. And, I live on the coast in Oregon, not a super populated area, so I don't have like a million P&C agents around me. But I didn't even, at the time, I had so much going on. The last thing I cared about was the policy itself. Mm-hmm. Like, I just wanted to get a policy so I could move in and move on with my life.
Meet standards. Just get it over with.
Literally, yeah. And one of the first conversations I had was with a PNC agency. I can't remember who. I mean, it's kind of irrelevant who they're representing. I want to say, I can't think of it. It was a brokerage, but they had one of like the big brands behind them. Again, kind of irrelevant for the story, but I get a customer service rep on the phone from the agency, and I explained the situation. I said, "Hey, I'm moving in. I need to get a home policy. Blah 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 blah." They said, "Okay, I will have someone get back to you within the next week." And I just about died. I was like, "It's gonna take a full week just to get a quote for my home."
Come on.
And again, I'm not a PNC agent. Christian and I laugh about PNC sometimes behind the scenes because it seems like a whole different world. If we end up having a PNC agent watch this, they'll probably be like, "Yeah, you guys are idiots." I still don't, the idea. And then, you know what I did is I ended up going through Progressive and I got the policy like that. Yep. Right?
Quote on the spot, right?
Quote on the spot, paid for it, signed up, paid the premium. That person lost my business. Mm-hmm. And because a week to quote me. And then I kept thinking about afterwards, I'm like, how many life and health agents have pulled shit like that? How many of you out there have been like, I'll give you a quote next week, Mrs. Jones? It's like, you think they're going to wait a week just to get a price from you? Like, you're crazy. You're crazy.
There's something to be said about making things easier on your customers.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like making
Amazon, right?
Yeah. I mean, that their entire business model is convenience.
Yes. 100%.
And I feel like so many of you don't think enough about the convenience of the customer, of your clients, right? We talked yesterday about retention. A big part of retention is just not being a pain in the ass to work with, right? Like not taking a week to quote somebody, that is classic definition of pain in the ass to work with mentality, in my opinion.
Yeah.
When I wanted to say, like, I'm not trying to beat up on the smoothie store, that's at my gym. I like the people there. They've gotten to know me. I'm a regular, right? Like very nice, friendly people. But it strikes me as a business that's ran by one lady. She has a handful of younger employees kind of thing. I get it. I understand that it's tricky, right? Maybe someone's starting to shift to open the store. Someone calls in sick, whatever the case might be. But you got to figure that shit out. You
have redundancies, right? There's got to be redundancies in place. If someone couldn't show up to open that smoothie shop, there should be someone else who can come in and cover and still open it on time. If this agent was out of town when I wanted a quote, they should have had another agent that they could have referred me to.
Yes.
And then they could have split the policy. I was literally a call-in. It was $0 marketing. I just looked up a local agent and called them.
Google My Business.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
I love this. I was so scared when you told me this. You're like, I've got a story. I'm like, here we go. I'm like, seatbelts. This is a great story. This is great.
I really do feel like a lot of you guys are fumbling the bag with a lot of
Yes.
very easy opportunities. And I think businesses in general, I don't think it's specific to
Yes.
insurance, but this is a message that I think everybody needs to hear. And look in the mirror, ask yourself, how many missed opportunities am I encountering on a weekly basis of easy deals I could get because I'm not available? I don't have anybody to answer the phone. I take a week to quote someone, whatever the case might be looking at that, because when you miss an opportunity and you fumble the bag, guess where that business is going? It's going to a bigger, more efficiently constructed agency that's set up to not fumble the bag.
Yes. 100%.
So that was my story. I wanted to start the show with.
I love it. I love it.
So let me talk to you guys about this episode's sponsor, if you will. I want to talk to you guys about Lead Heroes. We have an amazing promotion going on right now for Lead Heroes. Glenn, talk to the people. Talk to the people about the $20 a lead promo.
Medicare supplement leads from Lead Heroes right now are 50% off. They're normally $40 per lead. You can get them right now until the end of February for just $20 per lead. We are targeting folks already on Medicare supplements. This can be specific to your county, your state, multi-state. Such a fantastic way to write business year-round. Many of you post AEP might be struggling to get in front of more Medicare beneficiaries. I can't think of a better way to stay busy, continue writing insurance, and best of all, you can help us save Medicare supplement insurance from dying. If you're a fan of the pod, if you saw our previous episodes, shout out to Mr. Andrew Saul. I was blanking out his last name for a second. Shout out to Mr. Andrew Saul, who we had on. What a fantastic episode talking about how relevant Medicare supplement still is today, and how many great options there are for Medicare beneficiaries to sign up for Medicare supplement. And it can be a great way to get in the door and offer other services as well. We just talked about cross-selling. So take advantage of this promotion while you still can. Head over to leadheroes.com, LEADHEROES, leadheroes.com, and get some of these $20 Medicare supplement leads while they're still available.
Make sure to take advantage of this, guys. We are single-handedly on a mission to save Medicare supplement. We want to make it easier for you than ever to be able to acquire Medicare supplement business into your book, okay? And Great Lead Flow is the start. It's the end-all, be-all. It's the da-da of being able to do that, okay? So make sure to go get some leads, leadheroes.com. All right, let's shift gears, okay? Spicy meatball of a topic this morning of times we went bust. This idea, admittedly, was your idea on this topic. I thought it was phenomenal.
It was.
What is the thing that you were thinking about when you suggested the topic? Because clearly there was probably something that came to mind very early, right? Talk to us a little bit about a time in particular that comes to mind when Glen Shelton went bust.
There's several, for sure. There's several. And I love this topic because, and I'll tell you, I thought about this topic again about a week ago. I was watching a Tom Brady interview, and he was talking about how everyone's always asking him about his wins and about the Super Bowls. And he's like, those are all great. But he's always thinking about his losses, right? He's always thinking about those moments that really helped build up him as an individual or help build up his career. And I think that's so relevant. And I think about my losses all the time too, because a lot of times the losses are really what gets you to your next win. The number one thing, though, that I think about for my bust story, and there's many to pick from for sure, you guys. Shout out to Steve for thinking we were perfect. We're not even close. If anything, I would say the reason I've been so successful is because I've gotten through so many busts and moved on to the next thing to get to what's winning, what's working. But the number one thing is, without a doubt, when I tried to pivot Lead Heroes into a direct mail lead vendor. There's no doubt in my mind that that's probably the biggest bust, tens of thousands of dollars in losses essentially accumulated from this story. I guess we'll get into it. We'll get a little deeper into the bust.
So let me start with this question.
Yeah.
So if you had to put a dollar amount on it, what was the loss? If roughly, if you had to pinpoint it, what was the loss from that pivot, that decision?
It was definitely over 50,000. Definitely over 50,000, potentially more. And I can kind of explain to you guys where these losses came from, but not a small number. And at the time, I honestly thought it was going to be a death blow. I mean, it's a big number, especially if you're not like really well established. That's a really big number to just
absolutely
try to swallow that loss.
Yeah, 100%. So talk a little bit about the detail of like, what was the biggest challenge of going into direct mail? Because lead here, I mean, I think that'd be interesting for the audience to understand, right? Because like, I think a lot of agents, they see, okay, Lead Heroes does leads. What,
right.
What's the problem? They're leads. But it's a very different type of marketing, right? That you are a industry-wide expert in, right? It's something that's very unfamiliar to you. There's a lot of different elements to all kinds of different marketing that determines how they work, right? Talk a little bit about that.
So I grew up on direct mail leads coming into the business. I worked direct mail leads as an agent for years. I understood the sales side very well. So Lead Heroes, the model is all based on, data aggregation that gets fed into a call center that creates this call verified lead. That's the whole model. And we had a lot of success with that for many different reasons. Is one, essentially it's a double opt-in lead. So these people are actually interested. We're kind of weeding out people who aren't interested. Two, it's fast. So we talk to someone within 24 hours, it's getting into the agent's hands. Direct mail can be really slow. That's one of the downsides, especially if you're going through a mail house and a IMO, all of a sudden, who knows when that mail piece got filled out and then sent back. It can be weeks. I've talked to people where they're like, yeah, I filled that out like 3 weeks ago. Like, what was that even about? I don't even remember. So now that being said, I thought at the time, my vision for Lead Heroes was being a one-stop shop for agents, marketing wise. That was my plan, my grand plan of why I did this. Is I thought direct mail is still relevant, even if it's not what it once was. It's still something that's being utilized by many agents. Might as well kind of capture that business. They're already coming to Lead Heroes for marketing. Why not offer many different types of marketing? The vision, the roadmap I had was we would do, Facebook leads or social media marketing. We'll do direct mail. We'll continue this call center model and just continue to go horizontal, kind of like a horizontal expansion of the different types of marketing that we could offer at Lead Heroes. So now, again, thinking I was a genius at the time, I thought before going all in on direct mail, I will work with another mail house and I will white label their process. So I find a partner who I thought at the time was, kind of a nice fit because they weren't massive. So I was able to put together a white label deal. They actually flew out to Portland, took me out to dinner.
See, I've never heard this story.
Yeah. It was really interesting because, again, I thought the relationship was solid. So, dinner, drinks, attorney created a contract. We signed it. I thought this thing was a home run. And I would say initially it really was. We sold quite a bit of direct mail. The problem became the lack of control. It wasn't our mail house. All we could do was facilitate the orders, which we were really good at. We still are really good at. We're really good at interfacing with agents and communicating with them, explaining what's going on with their order. So, but from an operations standpoint, because this was a white label arrangement, I had no control over the actual mail going out. I didn't know. All I could base the communication off of is what I'm being told. Hey, Agent Billy just bought 10,000 pieces of direct mail. Did that go out? Or, hey, why haven't we seen any mail back for Agent Billy? And it's been, 3 months since we got the order and then we paid the mail house. Yeah. So as you can probably already see, I'm kind of giving you some foreshadowing here of where this is potentially going to go, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
what are your thoughts on? Yeah, tell me what you're thinking, sir.
So, I mean, it makes a tremendous amount of sense, right? I feel like there's been so many situations that I can think of where either myself or someone I know has gotten into a deal of some kind where they just don't have a lot of control over what might be going on. Sometimes it could be like an affiliate for something, or maybe, maybe it is a white label kind of situation. And on the surface, it looks like they're the ones that are, steering the ship, pulling the strings of the whole thing. But behind the scenes, they have very little control of any kind. All they can do is just kind of follow up with who's really kind of in charge of it all. And that puts you in a really difficult situation. It can work if you're working with someone that has their shit together and they're just really on the ball. Like, you don't have to worry about them. But when things go wrong, it puts you in a very, very difficult situation. So I never heard that much detail into it. I knew the story, but I didn't know, like the whole inner workings of it. So how I am a little curious on this. I want to stick with this just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
How did things end with the mail house?
Yeah. Well, so here's the other piece of this, right? Is if you understand direct mail, and a lot of agents don't want to spend a lot on marketing, or they want to test it, right? So they'll only want to drop 1,000 pieces of mail or 2,000 pieces of mail. And the problem with that, if anyone who's done direct mail marketing, if you only drop 1,000 pieces of mail, and that sounds like a lot, but there's a chance you'll get nothing back if you drop 1,000 pieces. So when returns are really bad, whether it's zero or it's really low, I have no idea. I'm, again, just getting communication from the white label partner. I don't know how much mail actually went out. And so then it starts to create this situation where I've got an agent who's upset. Why didn't I get any leads back? Or why did I only get, a 0.3% return on this mail? And, it could be that the timing was bad, right? A bunch of junk mail hits at the same time. Your piece doesn't get seen. Could be that the data pull for that direct mail that went out was just bad data, and it's hitting a lot of wrong addresses or wrong names, wrong people. That can happen too. So there's all these variables that completely out of my control. And then ultimately when this all built to a head was we got this really big order from an IMO, and they wanted a bunch of direct mail leads, and the leads were being resold without my part of this agreement that we had. It was supposed to be an exclusive deal. We pay the mail house drops the leads, we get those leads back, we give it to the agent. That was the whole process. This IMO that placed a really large order, it was essentially agent in the house. It was like a 2-agent situation. I don't know if they were I don't think they were there together per se, but it was like the IMO ended up tracking down this other agent, and they find out the lead was exactly the same. And they're like, what the hell's going on, Glenn? And that's when I go back to the mail house and I'm like, this is supposed to be an exclusive lead. What's going on? And they were like, I don't know. Like, they were trying to play dumb, but it was obvious what was going on. And I end up having to eat a chargeback essentially from that IMO on this massive order. And this is when now mind you, a sane person at this point would have probably been like, okay, time to move on. This didn't work. I doubled down on my bust here.
No.
I said, sir, I'm at the blackjack table. I'm like, sir, hit. You're like,
I'm at 19.
Yeah. I'm Dan Campbell. It's 4th and 27. And I'm like, hit, let's go, baby, hit. So then my thought is I need to save this part of the business because the revenue's there. I've showed proof of the revenue working, right? The process works. There was a lot of success stories beyond this IMO that we had this horrible experience with working with. So I go out and I get my house rewired and I lease equipment to start doing all of this myself internally.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Continue.
I get an electrician out. I have to get, my house rewired for the voltage for the equipment. I'm signing leases for mail equipment, for copy equipment.
So what was the plan of doing it out of your house? Were you going to be physically doing it, or were you going to bring someone in to work in your house?
The idea was at the time, and this was like early 2018, which seems like a lifetime ago at this point. But the idea was that I would start it, and then once it started to really take off and get bigger, I'll go get a warehouse or whatever, and I'll move all the equipment out. So it was just like, how can I keep costs down?
So you'd start it yourself, basically. Like you'd be physically running the equipment.
Physically, yes, physically printing, running it.
Okay.
I go down to the post office. I get my commercial account set up with them to like mail in bulk. I had to pay. It wasn't a ton. It was like $500, $1,000 or something for like my permit or whatever. And I get all my ducks in a row. And ultimately, what ends up happening, you guys, is the mail business. And shout out to the people who are still doing it. To the people who are still doing the mail. You guys are heroes. I'll tell you right now, after being this deep into the direct mail game, you guys are absolute heroes, because the margins are horrible. The returns are horrible. It is such a manually labor-intensive business. And I just got to the point where I felt like I was sinking the company that was working, the revenue stream that was working, the call center business that Lead Hero still is today. I felt like I was taking this anchor and like wrapping it around the neck of my successful business and like just diving overboard into the depths of the ocean. And so I end up just cutting. It gets to the point where I cut everything. I end up going to these equipment companies. I have to break leases. I'm paying these early terminations on leases that just, again, now the losses are really starting to stack up. I have this huge chargeback from this IMO on this original direct mail lead order that I was never able to fulfill. And that was a big part of the loss. And then the equipment was a big part of the loss. And then, that hands down, when I think about times I went bust, that was one of the biggest, for sure. There's more for sure, and I'm sure we'll get into more. But
sure.
Now, yeah. So that being said, what do you think?
I have some situations of my own that I'll share.
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
Before we move on from this one, I think my final question related to this one is, for the listener, what was the lesson?
This episode of the 7 Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by the 7 Figure University. 7figureuniversity.com is a culmination of Christian Brindle's and mine's educational videos that we have developed over the past 2 decades of combined experience in the senior insurance space. There's more than 250 videos, hundreds of hours of content that can help you become a top producer or a top producing agency in the senior insurance space. We're talking about videos of how to work with specific carriers, how to do different types of marketing, such as seminars or Facebook advertising, how to generate content in the niche to help grow your business, how to grow an agency, all sorts of things. There's so much value in this. It's unbelievable. Christian, what do agents need to know about 7 Figure University?
7 Figure University can best be thought of as an agency blueprint in a box that's put together for you, that brings you step by step in every facet of building a successful 7-figure insurance agency, and lays it out all in front of you so you can follow along. Whether you guys need help with marketing, whether you guys need help with branding, whether you guys need help with hiring, training, standard operating procedures, systems and processes, automation, you name it, it's covered in this course. Not only that, you get access to my weekly training calls every Thursday that go from January through the end of September on a week-to-week basis. And you can attend those live and ask questions live. And then, of course, the recordings are put into the university afterward if you can't attend it and make the live training. So there's just so much value. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and it's a great investment into your business to kind of keep you up to date on what's going on, but also kind of point you in the right direction in various things that you're struggling with.
Some of the best training you'll be able to find, you guys, in one spot for one price. Go to sevenfigureuniversity.com and learn more.
Let's get back to the show. Right? And it was an expensive lesson for sure. What was the lesson? Like, what would you say you walked away from that to where post-situation Glen understood?
Yes.
That pre-situation Glen did not. What was the lesson?
For sure. And it was a tuition in this sense. You know, I think about business school and how much money people spend to get their MBAs. And I'm like, man, I'm so far beyond that in tuition paid. And this is one of those situations where the lesson that I learned is focus on what you're good at and don't do anything else, essentially. You know, if you have something where you're profitable, and we talked about this on the show before, I want to say the episode was like going from 6 figures to 7 figures. We talked about this, and it's the way you scale from 6 to 7 figures is scaling what's really working, taking that core business, taking that business that's profitable and doing that over and over and over and over again and growing that. You can't, and there's exceptions to that rule. Like there are people who probably executed on a vision like what I talked about, where they grew horizontally and they did a bunch of different things to grow. But it's 100 times easier to do that one core concept, take what's working and scale that. That's how you grow. And that's how ultimately I ended up getting to 7 figures, is taking that core business that was working, that call center model business, and scaling that out versus trying to do all these different things and be everything to everyone.
Yeah. I think that's a great lesson.
Yeah.
It sucks when you have to go through a situation like that to learn it, but sometimes it's necessary. I feel like if every business owner is honest with themselves, they have times when they just took an absolute slug to the face, and it almost just crippled them.
That was a back alley beating, dude. That wasn't a slug to the face. That was a back alley beating. There was 5 people. I'm on the ground.
That was like you're in high school. You have a bully, and the bully is picking on you relentlessly, right?
Yeah.
You one day get a little bit of courage, perhaps liquid courage, behind the school. You stand up to your bully. You say, hey, screw you or whatever, right? The bully just clocks you and you crumble to the ground.
Yes. Yes.
That's like the visual I get in my mind, that type of thing. I'll talk a little bit about some of my experiences.
Please do.
So this doesn't have to be.
I'd like to hear your number one. What's your biggest or your first one that comes to mind?
So I don't have any.
I went bust.
Admittedly, I don't have anything I feel like as dramatic as that. Most people probably wouldn't know this, but like I played it kind of safe in the early years of my business. I worked my butt off. I didn't spend a lot of money. I didn't take any really big swings until I was already like a 400, 500,000 a year business.
Yeah.
So like when I did take swings and I lost, like it didn't hurt as bad.
Which is smart. You guys.
But however, where we could be today, if I was willing to take those swings, I mean, you could always play the hindsight 2020 game, but
devil's advocate.
The biggest one that I think of is when we first started our FMO, we started bringing on agents. I made a decision that, looking back on it, set us back about a year in progress on it. And it cost a ton of time, ton of resources, ton of money. We lost agents as a result. It was just such a horrifically train wreck of a decision. It was in 2021, I want to say. So I was approached by somebody who is very well known in the space to move over to them. And at the time we didn't have a lot of agents at the time.
This story qualifies for sure.
Yeah,
I know this story.
So at the time we had just started working with agents. I want to say we had 25 maybe total, maybe.
Yeah.
And we were in a situation with the current hierarchy that we were with at the time to where we were in a good spot. We had good relationships, good contacts, good point of contacts, good communication, good support. Like we could handle bringing on agents and getting them what they need in a timely manner, right? I was approached by this other person, and at the time I was a little bit naive in terms of, people trying to woo you. I think at that point in time, I had a chip on my shoulder, and I was kind of waiting for someone to try to woo me. I kind of always felt like people didn't try to woo me enough. I was like, I'm awesome. I'm gonna be the face of this industry. Like, why don't you know what I mean? Now looking where the company is today,
Anthony Edwards. You're like Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I was like Anthony Edwards of Medicare at the time.
Yes.
And so, I was probably in a position where I was primed to fall for something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was offered. Now, back in this time, some of these groups were offering agents. We've talked about this on the show before.
Yeah.
Upfront co-op to move. And so I was offered that. And it was, never forget, $20,000. That was the offer. And I was like, wow, I'm like, just to move? Like, that's what I was thinking at the time.
Yeah.
Not even comprehending all of the work that it would be. So, and there was also some things promised, we'll build you a new website. And I built my website completely on my own, but I wanted it to be better. Didn't want to spend the time on it. They're like, yeah, we'll have a new website built for you. I'm like, cool. What else? And there was a bunch of things.
I remember that.
And so I agree. They even fly me out to a small event that they're doing in Idaho. Turns out the event is literally
the company credit card. The company credit card. Remember that?
Oh yeah. We went out to dinner and was given the company credit card.
Like, hey, get whatever you want.
Anyway, I'm like, let's go. So I go to our current FMO at the time, or hierarchy at the time.
Right.
And I'm like, we need to be released. And got kind of ugly. They didn't want to release it first. I actually made the Facebook group was starting to bubble. It was starting to bubble over at that point. It was a real thing. I think we might have had 2,000, 3,000 members at the time. So I make the threat that I will publicly lambast them if they don't let me go. Because it was starting to go kind of ugly. The next day they let me go. And I'd still to this day have never seen this before. I was provided a 500-page reciprocal release agreement. 1 page for each contract that each agent had that needed to be signed by the agent, by me, by everyone. Like 500 pages reciprocal release for 25 agents or so. I've never seen anything like that before. That's when I started, throwing a fit, because I was like, I know for a fact you can just give me 1 piece of paper. I know insane. This. I'm like, you're not going to pull this on me. And it's, it's the FMO world. It's the games that are played.
It is.
After I made my threat, I got my 1 piece of paper. So we started moving. And what ended up transpiring was it became very clear to me that this other group that I was moving to, at least from what I saw, was a train wreck. Like, was not well ran at all. We got about 2 months into it, and I had not even received all my contracting links. If anybody has ever tried to move FMOs with a downline, typically you move first, then your agents can move after. There's some contracts where the agents will move with you, right? That kind of thing. But on the ones that they don't, you have to contract first before your agents can move, kind of thing. And we were 2 months in, and I had probably 15 contracts at the time. I had only received 6 contracting links, despite following up with them relentlessly. It became a huge energy suck for me, getting on calls with them, trying to figure out what was going on. They're making big promises about getting the links out to me. They couldn't get links sent out, like at all. Like the most basic thing of doing contracting. Come to find out, everything I was promised was slowly being pulled back. I was offered the $20,000 to move. Then, after the fact, once we started moving, it was like, well, I think we should only do 10 instead because you have 25 agents and that's it. I'm like, but you knew that up front.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, we're going to do 10. I'm like, and then, just everything that
Did you have a written agreement?
I don't remember. I think we had like emails, like things like that. But
yeah.
I don't think we had like an actual contract. So, and then it comes to find out that the person that was doing my contracting, from what it sounded like, I really don't know all the details, but like the person that was assigned to me, I was supposed to be like their next coming, is kind of the way it was sold to me. Like we're gonna help you grow. We're gonna wrap our arms around you. You are our golden child. We believe in you. What you're gonna become. And at that time, take into consideration where I was at the business. Yeah, I was a mega producer by myself. I was doing 300 to 500 apps a year by myself. But outside of that, I had 25 agents, maybe 4 or 5 of them were good producers. The rest were just dead weight. Like, it wasn't a huge organization. And the Facebook group was only a couple thousand people, right? I had maybe 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, kind of thing. Like, it wasn't who you know today. For when you look at it, like you look at the Facebook group, look at the size of our business, like look at the revenue, look at the production, like, staff, everything has just grown exponentially since then. But, we're over 500 contracted agents now. We have internal LOAs, we have big staff, we have 300 employees, everything. But at the time I wasn't that, but I think people could see where I was going. They knew I was onto something. And so anyway, the person that was assigned to my account, it later was revealed, was like involved with people that were like on drugs or something like that. I don't remember all the details, but I'm like you're shitting me. Like,
I remember vividly the phone call at the time when you called me afterwards, and you're like, you're not going to believe what I just was told. I was like, whoa.
So I want to say 3 months into this thing, maybe 4. And we were at a place where we couldn't contract agents. We had agents coming to us nonstop wanting to onboard. And we were in this weird in-between because our contracts weren't moving. You don't want to contract agents under the old hierarchy because then you just have to turn around and get them released, right? But you don't want to contract them with the new hierarchy because then, like, what if you don't move over, right? Then they're stuck over there. Like, so there was a lot of situations where like agents were just waiting for us to get our shit together. And a lot of them just left. We're like, you know what? I don't have time for this. I'm going to go somewhere else. We had agents that were currently with us leave because of the whole situation.
Brutal.
We basically were put on hold for 3 months, maybe 4. And like I said, it set us back, I think, a year. If I had just stayed where I was and not rock the boat, we could have continued to grow and had a really, really dynamic year for that part of the business. And it was just such a time suck for me. At the time, we didn't have any contracting department or anything like that. It was me. So anything that was going on was me. And I was spending huge amounts of time on it. And it ended up being fruitless. Nothing came from it. And it ended up just costing us a lot of money, time, resources. It's a huge regret.
So that's what I was going to ask you. So, I was trying to put a dollar amount on my loss. And obviously, like, the time waste is a variable that's hard to even calculate what that.
Yeah.
I feel good about that $50,000 loss number because I know it was at least that. So if you had to put an approximate dollar amount. I mean, especially if you take into consideration like a lost contracted agent. I mean, you have an agent that contracts with you and they turn into a solid producer and they're producing for years. I mean, that can be a decent revenue stream as an upline, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what would you guess that this little maneuver, the Matthew McConaughey meme, where he's like, this little maneuver is going to cost us 51 years, like what would you guess your loss on this was?
I mean, it probably, that 50K number sounds good to me. Sounds right. Wow. At least.
Yeah.
Because if you think about the compounding effect it had on the business for years.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like of what was lost during that time. I would say minimum 40K, maybe maximum 60 or 70, in terms of what was lost. And it was all for 20K up front.
Right.
And a new website. Like in the scheme of things, it's like, that is nothing.
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
It's painful.
You know what I mean?
It's painful to look back on it. Sorry. And it's interesting to me because I was kind of in the loop as the whole thing was playing out because we were doing Taco Tuesday at the time. So Christian and I were already communicating on a pretty regular basis, even though we weren't in business together in that sense. But yeah, that's a painful story to look, especially as an upline now, to look back on.
It's the biggest mistake I made, but it did teach me something, that the grass is not always greener. I go into negotiations with this type of mindset now. Everyone is trying to make themselves sound like the best. You know what I mean? Like every FMO says you're going to do more business with them than anyone else. Everybody says that. Like anytime someone says that, it almost makes me like not want to throw up a little bit. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, it's you know what I mean? Like, like on the spot in front of them. I'm like, wait, what? Can you repeat that?
What did you say?
But it made me realize, right? Like, people are salespeople, and they're trying to sell you. In this case, everything I was told was just a lie. Oh yeah, we can. You're getting this type of support now. We can do that. Oh, you're getting this. Yeah, we can do that. Oh, we can do this. We can do that. And they couldn't do anything. They couldn't tie their shoes.
Which was shocking because this was a big name too. This wasn't like some random company or some random IMO, you guys. Like if we name dropped it, you'd be like, wow. You would be surprised. This is an old guard. This is a company that's been around for a while.
And it helped me realize that the grass is not always greener.
Yes.
And to make a big move like that for the company, it has to be worth it. Like that was the biggest lesson that I learned out of it. Like it has to be worth it. Otherwise, it's not even worth considering doing. And I stuck the course with that current hierarchy. We became an integrity partner. We grew. We still have a very close working relationship with that old hierarchy. We ended up just going back to them, tail tucked between my legs, if you will. And they took me back with open arms. Or like, we love you, all the sketchiness about not wanting to release me, like was forgiven and forgotten, not forgotten, but forgiven.
We love you, Christian. Come back.
But anytime I've ever like flirted with the idea of going elsewhere, there has been a lot of that to where it's like a lot of smoke and mirrors and everything like that. And sometimes it's like, if you have a good situation, a good partnership, a good relationship, sometimes it's the bad idea to blow that up.
For sure. I think, and this was such an interesting topic. I feel like we've got to do a part 2 to this because I had more. Yeah. I had a solid second story to share, but I feel like I don't even think there's time to get into the weeds on it. But
I have a couple others as well. So maybe on Thursday we rerun it back, part 2.
Yeah. Comment below, you guys. Yeah, if you guys would comment below if you want a part 2. Yeah, let us know because there's a lot of bus stories I think that we can come up with for you. To circle back on my approach to what I was trying to do at Lead Heroes and how it's applicable to you as an agent and where I see agents go wrong all the time. And this will kind of be my final thoughts on today's episode, you guys. But and we've talked a little bit about this on the show before, but I see agents who are just starting to figure out the business. So let's say they come into final expense or they come into Medicare and they're just starting to figure out how it all works, right? How they can write a policy, the underwriting, how they're getting paid, how they can market and find more clients. And then all of a sudden they pivot and they're thinking, in order to make that much more money, I'm going to go get my PNC license. I'm going to go get my Series 6 and 63. I'm going to start offering variable products and investment products. And they're thinking, again, that same kind of mindset that I had, where if I'm in everything, when someone comes to me, I can offer them everything.
Mm-hmm.
And on paper, that might look like it could work. And you might even know other agents who might be pulling that off. But what I can tell you from a scaling point of view is the same lesson from when I went bust applies here. If you're figuring out a process, whether it's final expense, Medicare, or whatever line of insurance you're in, you have a significantly easier road ahead if you just scale what you already figured out.
Yep.
Just focus on what you're already doing. Not saying you can't add another line of insurance in at some point. You absolutely can. But trying to get into everything all at once is a recipe for disaster. That's how you really lose. That's how you end up busting like I did, is trying to be everything to everyone all at once, especially early on when you're just starting to have success. So learn from my mistakes and don't do that. Focus on what's working and scale what's working. And then you can add in other stuff later.
Grow vertically, not horizontally.
Yes, grow vertically, not horizontally. That's my final thoughts. Also, guys, Freebie Friday. We're giving away more MedSup leads this coming Friday. All you have to do is comment below on one of the streams we're doing in the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Facebook group this week. We've already done 2. We'll have 2 more coming at you. Any comment automatically gets you entered into the giveaway on Friday. You can potentially enter up and get in. Cannot talk. You can potentially get up to 4 entries into the raffle if you comment on every stream we do this week. Again, that's Freebie Friday. The raffle will be giving away Medicare supplement leads from Lead Heroes right here in the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Facebook group.
I love it. I love it. Great episode, guys. I already saw a couple of people chime in on the live stream in the Facebook group that you guys want a part 2. If you see this on any platform and you're allowed and you're able to comment or give feedback, let us know if you want to see a part 2. I'm sure that we will, though. I love this topic, and there's a lot that we didn't get a chance to get to that a part 2 would allow us an opportunity to dive into more. My final thoughts, guys, is I feel like there's two lessons I think overall you can take from these types of stories and situations. I think the first one is you can learn from other people's mistakes, so you don't have to make them yourself. But to some degree, you're always going to make big mistakes along the way. That's the downside, I think, of being a business owner, to where so many people just don't make it, right? Because you have to be able to take the slugs and the beatings and get back up, dust yourself off, and say, "Thank you, can I have another?"
Please.
Get punched in the face. Your nose is busted. It's crooked. There's blood trickling down. You're like, you get up and you're like, "Thank you very much. Please, one more. I'd like one more."
Yes, 100%.
You have to be able to do that to a certain extent.
I would argue that your success as a business owner stems from how good you are at that specifically. Mm-hmm. I've thought a lot about my own success, and I feel like my ability to be uncomfortable like that is where a lot of my success stems from. I think that's so well put.
And I've gotten tremendously better at it over the years. It didn't come naturally to me, but and I would gripe, complain, I'd get down, I'd get upset, I'd get pissed off. But it didn't let it stop me. I think you're probably even better at it than I am, to be honest. Like,
lots of practice.
I still have moments where I'm like, I'm just angry and I just need to go to sleep. Get over.
Put the baby down. The baby needs to go to bed. Okay. He's grumpy. He's grumpy today.
but I always get up the next day and I always come back and I always am focused on getting over the hump and solving the problem, whatever it is.
Yes.
And that's a big key. I think the other thing is, just learning from people's mistakes, but also just understanding you're going to have to go through some of those yourself. But it's a mix. You don't have to go through as many if you learn from other people's mistakes. And hopefully this episode helped you do that. Tomorrow, we're going to be having Galen Hendricks on as a guest, the queen of the bundle. So you don't want to miss that episode.
No, you do not.
Super excited to talk to her as always. Longtime friend, mentor, everything else in between, motherly figure in the industry of sorts.
That's right.
And it's been too long since we've done anything with her, so I'm super excited to have her on. If you're watching on a platform that allows you to do so, please make sure to comment #TeamReplay if you watch the replay. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review on platforms like Apple Podcasts. We'd certainly appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on Spotify and any other platform you might be listening to us on. The podcast does have its own YouTube channel now called 7 Figures or Bust Podcast, I believe is the full name. It's up to 15 subscribers now. So make sure to go over and subscribe to that channel to get full-length video recordings of the podcast if you prefer that medium. We'll be back next time with another episode. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, guys. And here's to your massive success. Thanks, everybody.